live in MBJ-Today. It's a very nice place. It's in the hills. It's in the mountaintop. It's actually a city built on the ridges of several mountaintops, and the ridges like converge together, and the valleys in between have less houses in them. They are more open, and it has it's quite large. It's now about 80,000 people. It's on the West Bank, and this is concluded.
Wow.
This is considered a large number for this area. It's relatively new.
That is a substantial number.
Yeah. It's all relatively new, and I would say 90%, 95% of the population are ultra-Orthodox, which has advantages and disadvantages, but for me it's very good because this is a lifestyle I have, my family has. I also have family here. They live in another part of the city, but I see them quite often recently, and this also helps. On Shabbatot, I go and visit them by foot. It's about a 40-minute walk. It's also nice. And so anyway, it's a nice settlement. So what I wanted to talk about, continue the recent topic of the Messiah, son of Joseph. I had a lot of material on that, and we're just to wind it up, because the Messiah ben Joseph, it's important, it's interesting, but it's not something that we do all the time. We just want to something that we mention and work on, and it helps illustrate other subjects. And people are interested in it, but not to an overwhelming degree. It's a curiosity, one could say. But it does help illustrate how Jewish sources consider the whole idea of the lost 10 tribes and the figure of Joseph, the task of Joseph, as symbolic in the symbolic terms. So this is what we'll. So this is what we'll talk about. The Messiah, son of Joseph, is a future figure. He's a figure found in Jewish thought. We've spoken of him in the past several times, and the idea has been known from ancient times, but it wasn't. It was known. There was ancient sources speaking of him, but not that many. Here and there, prominent sages, prominent rabbis spoke of him, mentioned him. Sometimes just mentioned him in passing. At other times not. But in recent years, more and more Jews have been interested in it. They've taken an interest in the idea, and this helps them explain phenomena that take place, so the return of the Jews to the land of Israel, in which the Messiah, son of Joseph, was said to have been interested in it, to take a part in it, and that it helps explain a lot of things. So we also accept that. We also need to notice that the Messiah, son of Joseph, was said to be from Joseph. Was from the tribe of Joseph, usually from the tribe of Epoch. One source says to Manasseh, but usually from the tribe of Manasseh. Usually from the tribe of Ephraim. Lord is from Joseph. Messiah, son of Joseph, is from the tribe of Joseph. He leads the 10 tribes in the end times. And in addition to that, he helps rebuild the land. He helps bring the Jews back to the land of Israel. He helps them build up the land, or he's destined to do so. So how this comes together from being from the 10 tribes, but also helping the Jews rebuild the land and so on, it's not certain, it's not so clear, it's not known, but these are different sources mentioning this. And if we understand, as they themselves, as for instance, Rabbi Kook identified the Messiah, son of Joseph, the whole phenomenon of modern Zionism. He said modern Zionism is an effect, an aspect of Messiah, son of Joseph. As far as he understood it, Messiah, son of Joseph represents this epoch, this period that we are living in is represented, dominated by the Messiah, son of Joseph, and aspects, characteristics of the period we're living in with this. And Messiah, son of Joseph, is also in sources, he's not that religious, and it's not that religious. He emphasizes more the physical aspects of existence, and he prepares the land for the coming of the Messiah. So Rabbi Kook saw the Messiah, son of Joseph, as the spirit of the Messiah, son of Joseph, as dominating the modern Zionists who came back to the land in the early 1890s and onwards, and after that, throughout from then on, more and more, they emphasized building up the land, preparing the infrastructure of the land, providing a place of refuge for Jewish refugees, for Jews who needed a place to come to, and creating a modern state. Messiah, son of Joseph, in the teachings of Rabbi Kook.
There we go.
How are you?
There we are.
Rabbi Kook, incidentally, was an important rabbi before the foundation of the State of Israel in the early days of the Jewish settlement, just before the foundation of the State of Israel, and Jews started coming to the land and the population started growing. The secular Zionists were doing much of the building, even though religious Zionists were also important. Secular Zionists had taken over the issue, they'd taken control of it, and they were the interface with the British administration. The British also did a lot. The British did more than anyone else, but they cooperated with the Jewish Zionist organizations. And they got on well with them, and he saw the modern Zionist movement as representing an aspect of the period which is dominated by Messiah, son of Joseph. Messiah, son of Joseph prepares the ways of to say, builds up the land, he prepares it, makes the infrastructure, he puts everything in progress for a modern viable state. And that is how Rabbi Kook saw it, explained it. And he has a whole books on this, philosophical books. This is not the only thing he talks about philosophy in general, Jewish philosophy in general, but this is one of the themes he's known for, but it doesn't answer all of the questions concerning Messiah, son of Joseph. Messiah, son of Joseph is also described in other sources as heading the lost 10 tribes when they return, initiating the reconciliation between the lost 10 tribes and Judah. The lost 10 tribes are Gentiles. They are not known as Jews. They don't know who they are. But even so, the Messiah, son of Joseph, leads them, helps them, saves them from their oppressors, and he also helps the Jews, and he helps the Jews come back to the land of Israel. And he does other things along those lines. Yes.
Question. I have a question here, Yair. This Messiah, son of Joseph, is there any connection between that individual and David the king that is spoken of in the prophets as being part of the restored future people of Israel?
Could you elaborate a little? I didn't quite catch it.
Yeah, okay. Messiah, son of Joseph, is the big figure that is going to be instrumental in leading the returned exiles. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. And now in the prophets, Hosea, Ezekiel, and I think Isaiah too, it refers to David the king. coming back.
Yes.
Now, who is that David character? Could that be the same as Messiah, son of Joseph?
No, but you're entering into a concept that is dovetails with the concept. We wanted to go about to the whole idea of Messiah, but Messiah, son of Joseph, Messiah, son of David, as well as being real individual people, so represent, they embody a whole movement.
Okay.
We precede them. And they will come as if to say, to embody, to give fruition to the whole movement of ideas or trends of thought that existed before them, that had been set in place. I often use the historical parallel, not exact, but also the other historical parallels. So the historical parallel I often use is that of Napoleon. For instance, Napoleon, you had before Napoleon, you had King Louis XIV, and then the King Louis XV and King Louis XVI. You had France under the King Louis XIV, who was an absolute monarch, and he represented the old medieval period. He also brought the medieval period to its height. They always had trends towards absolutism, but they were in France, but they're always fighting. They're always having inner conflicts with the nobles against the kings, against different sections of the kingdom of France. Used to fight with each other, always having those internal problems. So Louis XIV came along and he stopped all that. And he, in effect, emasculated the nobility. He got all of the nobility, I don't know how, most of the nobility to give up living on their feudal estates, to come and live in a palace in Versailles, and to live a life of idleness, more or less, or to engage themselves in pleasures and entertainments and intellectual pursuits, but not to interfere with his overall absolute governing of the country. And this exacerbated internal tensions because these aristocrats were living off the peasantry and of the common people, and they were in effect oppressing them and discriminating against them and living at their expense and treating them with disdain. Together with that, there were a gifted group of people, and they also contributed a lot of scientists, a lot of prominent figures also came from the aristocracy. And also, and Louis XIV began to reform France. He introduced all kinds of reforms. He made France a powerful state in Europe, relative to the other countries of Europe, even more modern, one could say. And he passed away. He was followed by Louis XV, who didn't do very much, and then came Louis XVI, who was also wasn't very active, wasn't very dominant, but the process of modernizing the country, of opening up to new ideas, of philosophy, of new trends of thought, was growing and growing and growing until along came the French Revolution and overthrew the monarchy and executed the king and the queen and a good portion of the aristocracy, and they changed the whole country. And they did this in a couple of years. And then they swayed themselves were having coups and counter coups and killing each other. And together with that, all of Europe, the monarchs of Europe around them, including England, including states in Germany, including the Holy Roman Empire, what was left of it, they all attacked France. They wanted to put a stop to this because it was a threatening their regimes. And it would appear as if they would be a pushover. But they weren't. They were enthusiastic supporters of the revolution, and also they had their own intellectuals, their own experts, and their armies defeated all the armies of Europe, or most of them. And so that was the result of that. And also they took in people from all over the realm of France, including Corsica, which wasn't even French. It was actually an island which France had occupied, taken over, and its inhabitants spoke a dialect of Corsican, which was more like Italian. And there was one person, Napoleon Bonaparte, who initially had belonged to a Corsican independent movement. The worked against France, but nevertheless he joined the army. He learned, he progressed, and he became. And in the course of all these wars that were going on, he went up in rank until he became the third most important person in the country, and then he took over the country altogether. And then he revolutionized the country. He changed it and he incorporated aspects of the revolutionary ideology together with the old aristocratic aspects. He brought them all together and he applied the energies and he rationalized everything. The metric system is due to Napoleon, not Napoleon, but people working on under Napoleon. They made numerous reforms that even now are still in effect, were introduced by Napoleon. And then he conquered most of Europe, a good portion of Europe, including the German states, Holland, Italy. And then he tried to invade Russia, and he made a mistake at that. He also invaded Poland. And everywhere he went, he introduced these reforms, and a lot of the local peoples were enthusiastic followers for them because they're also suffering from the same problems that have brought about the French Revolution. So it went on. And then in the end, unfortunately, he came up against the English. He had problems. He was over ambitious, but he did do a lot of good. And many of the reforms that he introduced lasted. He freed the Jews. He gave the Jews equal rights everywhere he went. He also removed a lot of superstitions, a lot of bad practices, medieval practices which were ruled everywhere, and he stopped that. He rationalized the whole of the world in his time, the civilized world, and there was consequently more scientific methods, more rational methods, and agricultural bounty and material prosperity increased under him. People were enthusiastic about him. So we take this as being similar to how we, according to the sources, are understanding what will happen in the Messianic era. That before the Messianic era, a whole process of events, of movements, of trends of thoughts will build up. And eventually a real person will come along. So we apply that both to the Messiah, son of Joseph, and the Messiah, son of David after him. And in the Bible, you won't find, here and there, you find hints at two messiahs. For instance, in Abijah, at the end of Abijah, Messiah's saviors were God on Mount Zion, and elsewhere. And you also find Ephraim and Judah operating as independent bodies from each other before they reunify, and so on. There's indications there must be probably other, and in addition to the Messiah, son of David, there must be someone else helping him, or several people helping him, also leaders in their own right. So this is how we see it happen. So what we also understand, the biblical message talks about the Messiah, and here and there it indicates more than one person, but it also concentrates on David. So the Messiah, son of Joseph, is an aspect. It'll be in the big picture, is an aspect of Messiah, son of David. He prepares the way for him. He works for him. The Messiah, son of David, will complete. The Messiah, son of Joseph, initiates the processes, and these processes will be completed, brought to full fruition through Messiah, son of David. So that's how we see it. We also understand the history going in cycles, history repeating itself. As we said before, that they have cycles, that the scenarios repeat themselves, with players a little bit different, change here and there. But each scenario gets closer to what the real thing will be like. For instance, the aspects of World War II that are indicated in the Messianic age and aspects that are not. But possibly history is ongoing. The next time round it might get closer, should get closer, according to our understanding. And even if we are wrong, this is a tool to understand what is going on, a tool to understand the sources, to put the sources in some type of framework, and to comprehend